Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. I am your host, Lonnie Jones. My wife Jackie and I moved to Huntsville in 1986, and we've had a wonderfully fulfilling experience living in this city. Our life has been filled with opportunities, and our life has been filled with outright adventures. I've been in ministry since the spring of 1980. Jackie and I have been married for over 37 years. I've been a licensed professional counselor for about 23 years, and I've also worked with the local police department as a chaplain who is assigned to a SWAT team. This spring is my 29th year to be in that role. I used to write little snippets in a church bulletin, and they were stories, and we'd take those day-to-day stories and talk about facts. The facts lead to concepts, the concepts lead to applications, and we take those applications and try to have some life lessons out of them. We've turned those articles now into a audio form, which is our little podcast. Just a cautionary word about the facts. Sometimes we tell you the facts just exactly the way it happened, but every now and then we like to tell the story the way we've heard people tell the story, the way they say it happened. And we're going to do a little bit of embellishment. It's all in good, clean fun. It's for educational purposes. Thank you for joining our podcast. Be sure and check out our resource page, LonnieJonesResources.com. That's a link to our books and some other products. We have some online resources that you can click for free, and some of them are for purchase. But we thank you for keeping up with Jones. Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure, is sponsored by SJ&L General Contractors. They are licensed in both Alabama and Tennessee, and they provide services such as mass grading, storm drainage, sewer and concrete improvement, asphalt paving, erosion control, demolition, and heavy hauling. If you need any of these services, contact them 931-433-4660, 931-433-4660. Also, they are in need of heavy equipment operators, concrete finishers, CDL dump truck drivers, and pipe layers. If you're interested in employment with this family-owned business, you can go to the website www.sjnl.com. That's www.sjnl.com. In a series of presentations I make called Raising Spiritually Self-Reliant Children, I use a passage out of Paul's letter to the church at Thessalonica, where Paul says that when he was in the city of Thessalonica, he treated the people there as a father treats his own children. And he uses three particular phrases. He said, we encouraged, we comforted, and we urged you. And those are my 3 points. I talk about the parental job of encourage, comfort, and urge. And even when I do men's conferences, I talk about that men should encourage, comfort, and urge one another. In order to illustrate my point about encouragement, I tell the pine tree monster story. It's one of my favorite stories, and I use it in that presentation almost all the time. I had wrapped up, I think it was night 1 of the lecture, maybe it was the second night, and I was walking out of the building, and I passed this elderly gentleman. Had to be north of 80, dapper in his black suit, a very thin tie, holding a little black hat, his pencil-thin gray mustache. He made eye contact with me as I walked down the aisle, and he chuckled and said, "Mine was the panther in the coal bin." And I stopped and I said, I'm sorry. He goes, I had to go to the coal bin and shovel coal. I just knew there was a black panther sitting up there and all that blackness staring at me. Then he chuckled and said, but I was just a boy. There weren't no panther. And there we stood, separated by generations, but bonded by a memory of being boys, in a memory of being afraid. And although neither of our monsters were real, we were able to be real about our monsters. When I talk to people about supporting each other, when I encourage dads to support their children, when I encourage elders to support congregations, and when I encourage spouses to attune with the other spouse and just try to see the world from their perspective, really it's just about being genuine, about being honest, about our monsters, telling each other the truth about us. And I don't mean in some overblown, too much information at the wrong time. I don't think we have to sit down and bare our souls, but at the same time, knowing that I have monsters should really tell me that you do too. But we often think that we're the only person who's ever been alone or ever been afraid or ever been intimidated. And having a frank discussion that, hey, this was my monster, and then somebody else laugh and smile and say, well, mine was different, but it was still a monster. And I guess if we leave the discussion of pine tree monsters and Black Panthers and coal bins, we can talk about fears, and we can talk about weaknesses, and we can talk about shortcomings. I think it's Brené Brown who says shame is the fear of loss of connection. And shame is that thing that causes us to be disingenuous with one another. And being disingenuous leads us to disintegration. And the disintegration is not like the little guy on Bugs Bunny cartoons. You have made me very angry. I'm going to disintegrate you with my P-28. No, it's disintegration is where we're not connected. We're not honest. We don't talk. And then in an attempt to insulate others from our imperfections, we isolate from them. Just being able to admit that, I have to work on my marriage. I think my teenage children are crazy. I'm afraid of this, or I'm struggling with that. There's something very powerful about admitting, no, you have a monster. There's something very strengthening in the fact that although yours might be different than mine, the simple fact that I know that you've won the struggle, or at least you're still continuing to struggle, it gives us both value. It gives us both strength. It gives us both hope. We do this activity on our challenge course. It's called a spider's web. And essentially, it's just a bunch of strings stretched between two rigid objects. You can use two trees. You can use two posts. You can use the post on the pavilion. And typically, your typical spider web has 16 openings, and we put a team on one side and say, now you've got to come through the spider web. You can't go over it. You can't go under it, and you can't touch the web at all. If you touch the strings and cause them to vibrate, then strange and wonderful things will happen to you. Strange and wonderful means that we blindfold you or make you hold an arm in a weird position, or you get the curse of the praying mantis. But after we finish the exercise, we talk about, hey, what did you learn from doing this thing? And almost without fail, someone points out the fact that, nobody really goes through this thing without help. And even if you are someone who goes through the web and don't require any assistance, everybody that comes through the web after you've gone through, you actually help them. I'm really blessed that the thing that I do on the planet, my ministry, and when I say ministry, please understand, I use the word ministry in its original meaning to be a servant. Ministry is not up front out loud wearing a tie with a title. You don't have to be a deacon or a preacher or a teacher to do any of that. This is what you do on the planet. And sometimes the thing that you do to make a living and the thing that you do on the planet are interrelated. There are lots of things that I get paid to do that I feel like are also beneficial to other people. Some people have jobs that don't help other people. They just produce products or make money. And then you have to find your ministry somewhere else outside that. If you really want to know what your ministry is, if you really want to know why you're on the planet, ask yourself, what have I been through? What monsters have I faced? What thing have I had to be honest about? And when you decide what you have been through, then you know what you have been qualified to help someone else go through. It may be a loss. It may be a disappointment. It may be dealing with an inadequacy. It may be dealing with a disease. It may be overcoming an injury. It may be going through a transition. But that thing that you've gone through qualifies you to help someone else go through it. Everything that you've gone through qualifies you to help someone else go through the same thing. Standing in a church aisle, looking at a person who is close to twice your age and having a simple conversation. The depth of the words, "Mine was a panther in the coal bin," is so powerful that we shared genuineness for just a moment. Two grown men and separated by generations, and maybe we should have been laughing at our boyhood fears, but we actually connected on the fact, not that our monsters weren't real, but we were just being real about the monsters. There are 32 miles of cave passages in Cumberland Cavern. 333 feet underground is the Volcano Room. The Volcano Room is the site for the youth rally known as Erupt. It's an underground youth rally. It's an annual event. It takes place in October. The next Erupt is scheduled for October of 2021. Erupt is a sponsor of Keeping Up with Jones, the Lonnie Jones podcast adventure. If you'd like more information, you may contact them at eruptyouithrally@gmail.com. That's eruptyouithrally@gmail.com. Or check out their website for more information, 3 W's and a dot, eruptyouithrally.com, www.eruptyouithrally.com.